Hey church, welcome to week 2 of our COVID conversations. We hope that this is a great resource into your life in this season. Our special guests, which we will introduce in a minute, are pastors David and Sally Doery, and we hope this is a real great investment and encouragement to you. If it is, make sure you comment below, let us know how it's helped you. We'd love to hear more from you, and we'll be back next Friday with our third installment of COVID Conversations.
Welcome, David and Sally. So you are a couple that we've just known for maybe 18 months, 2 years. And the first time that I met you, we were on a tram in going back from Munich,
right,
randomly. And I just spent 5 minutes talking to you at a conference, speaking together with some more friends of ours. And there was just a connection straight away. I sat and talked to Sally, and I remember thinking, this lady knows everything. Like, I need to spend more time with Sally. And then both of you came over last year and became kind of very quickly spiritual giants with our staff team.
Yeah.
And so we love everything that you bring to us. Quite often, many of our church won't know, but you'll send, especially Sally, a word to the team and be praying for you. So we so value your input into church. And when we were talking about what do we do in this season, how can we really not just kind of survive it, but really thrive and invest in ourselves, we looked at some of the issues that are rising up, and there's been a few things. We talked about mental health last week, but marriage is quite under pressure right now, and so we wanted to look for a couple who are a godly couple who have journeyed marriage for a while and parenting. And you've done that a little bit. So we just wanted to kind of get some wisdom from you for half an hour just to help church in this season. So do you want to introduce yourselves a little bit, kind of share a little bit of your story before we kind of get into some of the questions that we've been sent and we've got for you?
Sure. Firstly, thanks for the opportunity. It's brilliant. We loved connecting with you, loved connecting with the church. And it's such an influential church. It's awesome. And watching you online, what you're doing now, just before anything, pass on congratulations to all the team, because you've obviously gone on a huge growth curve, but you're having an incredible influence in really tricky times. And so we're delighted. We've been married for 38 years. We've raised 5 kids, 4 of them married in about 3 weeks, I think, or 4 weeks. We're having grandchild number 7.
Wow.
So there's 6 grandsons so far. And we don't know what number 7 is going to be, but it's possibly going to be, if it's another boy, there'll be 7 grandsons.
Wow.
Christmases and our family birthdays are going to be absolutely wild.
Wow.
We are very passionate about family, very passionate about marriage, particularly in a ministry setting, because there are so many that ministry can bring a lot of pressures. So making sure that you raise, making sure that you've got the healthy marriage, that you can raise kids right, no matter what the season, no matter what the setting. And I think nowadays pressures are on; they're huge. And so it's such a valuable opportunity to come back and look at, okay, how do we keep building great marriages, great relationships, and if the kids are there, keep the home, healthy and strong during what is a tough season.
Yeah. I think being in ministry, it's a bit, sometimes you feel like you're in a goldfish bowl, that everybody is looking at you, when your children can feel like everyone's looking at them. And it is a delicate path that you have to steer to keep everything normal and not have abnormal pressures on yourselves or on your kids that other people put on you, and not even just in ministry, but just as Christians. Yeah. People look at how are you living and what's different about you, and it's not easy, but it's possible to do it really well.
Yeah, very true, very true. So we're obviously focusing today on marriage, and one of the things that everyone's facing across the globe is more time with family, more time sometimes than they would normally be used to, without kids at school and partners, possibly 2 of them in the home, working from home. Obviously that brings its own pressures as well. And so do you want to just give us some thoughts into that, we're not saying that all marriages are under strain, as in everybody's cracking at the seams and everything's falling apart, but there's obviously an unusual pressure, even just with people spending more time at home. And so everybody's feeling that squeeze in terms of there's a more pressured environment. how can we develop in that time and really strengthen marriages in that season?
I would say that the first thing is to actually recognise that, okay, it is not business as usual. And because which demands you have to have a strategy. However you have been doing things, you can't do that anymore. Routines, like you said, everything has changed.
Very good.
You just have to stop for a moment and realise, okay, we have to have a strategy. And I'm sure it's the same where you are, where we are. We don't know how long this is going to go on. And so it's not about just, I've just got to make it through a couple of weeks. We have to have a strategy that in this unusual time that is going to make sure that we go through it. So the first, I think, is actually stopping and realising, okay, how are we going to do this, and getting everybody on the same page, and getting the clear strategies that sort of come out of that thinking, number one.
Yeah, because it's one thing to say when you're in the busyness of life and you're both crazy working and juggling a family, oh, I wish we could have more time together. We just don't get enough quality time. And now all of a sudden, like I know for me, it's like there's only the two of us at home at the moment, and everywhere I go, he's there.
She's there.
and
always in the
so,
way. Like it wasn't like this before. Everywhere I go, she's there.
We have to work out how are we going to deal with this and deal with it well. And I think it's understanding your partner's rhythms and your partner's likes and figuring out, well, is that such a big deal to me? Can I be flexible? Maybe we have one study, maybe, we share. Maybe, it's more important for him to have the study at such and such a time. So
important.
We work things out, and it's not easy, but it's possible. But once you get, I think, a bit of routine is really a good idea, so that you just say, okay, this is how we're going to work it. If it doesn't work, you can adapt. But I think it's just so important to be flexible and try different things.
Right.
And the key to all of that is, of course, communicating all the way through.
Right.
So if you are feeling that pressure, because I think one of the big things, apart from the practical realities of being compressed together all of that time, one of the big things that goes is the me time, and then the networking time outside the family home. And me time and networking time, that's part of emotional health. It's part of relational health. And so if you take those two things out and you don't put strategies to re-establish some kind of balance, there's real trouble. So just acknowledging, okay, how much me time do you need? When is that going to work for you? Where can we create that space? Creating the different spaces in the home, particularly if you've got kids around. That you just got to create spaces or zones and time frames where this happens here at this time, and try and create a sense of order and routine. Otherwise, it's just going to be a mess of conflict. Because it's all new.
Sure.
And you mentioned conflict there. That's one of the things that we ask some of our leaders, what things do you want to talk about, and for us to ask. And one of the things that came up a couple of times is, how do you deal with conflict and arguing well? Because it's going to happen, with most people, occasionally there's disagreements, two different personalities. Is there any way to do it well that doesn't end in some big explosion, and kind of manage it in some way? What would you advise for that?
We never fight, so we can't really comment on it. But we know some friends,
sure.
and they often have problems, and they've told us some good things.
Okay, good.
Sally's in the heroes.
I think you have to have an understanding of how your partner is wired. We often talk about different couples and I guess anger management or conflict resolution, and some people kind of blow up and they explode, and they have this little thing where it's like, this is what makes me mad about you, and they get it off their chest and then they're fine. Whereas other people tend to internalise and they're really ticked off about something, but they're not going to say anything. They just think, oh, what really ticks me off. And so I think you have to firstly understand how each other is wired, and I think you have to try not to argue when there's anger and intensity, but say, okay, we're having an issue here. How about, if we put the kids to bed, how about if we meet at 8 o'clock? How about if we set aside half an hour and just discuss this? Because the least helpful thing is to actually have an argument when you're angry, and it takes discipline to actually say, okay, this isn't working right now, because you know what it's like. You talk at cross purposes and you don't hear what the other person is saying.
Yeah.
And so to actually discipline yourself to go, okay, time out, we'll talk about this later, and then come back in a calm frame of mind. You will have processed and thought things out, and then you can speak calmly.
Very
and
good.
it's really helpful.
I think even before the conflict becomes an issue, particularly in this season where so many of us are confined, is just trying to up the level of grace, so that you're just thinking all of the time, okay, this is potentially a pressured thing. I'm feeling a bit stressed because my space is being invaded, my routine's a mess, I'm stressed, my partner's probably, and just carrying an extra level of grace, so that you're not the first to get annoyed or whatever. Then if conflict does come, all the old things are just count to 10, breathe, whatever, diffuse as quickly as you can and come back and address it when your emotions are settled, and also when you've had time to process whatever the conflict was and put non-emotive language around it.
Very good.
So you use the right language that just simply says, when you did this, it made me feel like. Instead of attacking, instead of going all defensive, just slow down, get your emotions under control, get your language right, so that you can then sit down with your partner. And again, the other side of that, learn to express wisely, sensitively, as a peacemaker. But then the other big skill is listen. So what Sally will often say to me is, I don't want you to say anything. Which for me is really hard. But she says, I don't want you to say anything. I just need you to listen.
Yeah, very true.
And that's a very powerful tool, because she can say what she's thought about, say it articulately, and she's not attacking me, and I've just got to go, okay.
Yeah. And by not using emotive language, we're talking about language that says things like, you always do this, or you never do that, but to just bring it down a few notches, because the fact of the matter is we've all had to deal with so much change so quickly, and our lives now look unrecognisable. If you had said to any of us 3 months ago, this is what your life is going to look like in 3 months' time, none of us would have believed it. So the fact of the matter is we've gone through a lot of turmoil internally, adjusting, and so I think our reserves are actually lowered, and everyone knows the person that you're most likely to launch out at is the person you feel the safest with and the closest to.
Thank you.
Just recognizing, hey, a lot of stuff has happened and it has taken a demand. We look like we're coping really well, but at the end of the day, we all are much more vulnerable to conflict. Yeah,
that's really true. And having grace with each other as well is just so key, isn't it? Because everyone's situation looks different. For some families right now, they're both working full-time but also homeschooling. That's what we're doing. Some families, one partner's working full-time in the home, one is on the front line. So, we have several NHS workers or military workers who are really facing it. And then but other parents stuck at home with the kids. And it is weird right now because you can't go anywhere. And so there's all this tension. So that's so helpful and practical to let things go.
Very interesting what you were saying there, Sally, about because even where we haven't articulated it, that we've all dealt with so much in the last 5 or 6 weeks that the reserves were already low. Because, therefore, because I think, I don't think we're falling apart, but I think there's definitely been, times where we've argued or times when things have been tense. No, you don't think? Maybe we're having it right now. But yeah, that our reserves are already lower. That kind of just gives language to that. Okay, that makes sense why I feel on edge more often, or why something that should be fairly simple and mundane seems to cause tension, because we're all dealt with or dealing with the conflict of everything.
And we're also different, right? So you love routine, and suddenly there's no routine away.
Sure.
I like control, and so there's no control anywhere. And so I'm just realising how grace with each other is.
And I think when you do understand all that, that's when you have to make that conscious decision. Okay, I've got to up the grace, because we're all just that little step away from saying something or doing something that we really don't want to do, but we're more stressed at the moment. So making that decision right at the beginning of the day or all through the day, okay, no grace. And then I think if there has been conflict, apart from the expressing that and listening, then reflecting on it and asking, okay, well, how did I contribute to that? And what do we need to change? It's got to be something that we take away from that time as well.
Very good. One of the things that we've been trying to talk and focus on is obviously the stuff that we're reacting to within this, but we're looking for the opportunities as well. And so Gail mentioned a phrase that we've tried to use a lot, that not just survive but thrive in this time. So we're taught a lot of what we've said so far is, I guess, the reactionary of, okay, there's more tension, there's more arguments, there's more whatever, but there is opportunity in this, and time for family, time for couples. So I guess using that idea of not just surviving it, but thriving it, is there anything that you could speak into of actually how couples can not just deal with stuff, but actually enhance things, use this time not just to get through, but to benefit in the midst of the lockdown?
Yeah. I think there's quite a few. Do you want to go?
I think, one of the things that we've really taken advantage of now that David's not, up early and having early morning meetings here, there and everywhere, is that 3 times a week, first thing in the morning before we do anything else, we just pray. We pray for you guys, and we pray for your team, and we pray for your church, and, we pray for other friends around the world. We pray for family, and we pray for whatever is laid on our heart to pray for. But that was something that was really hard to do before this time, because we had such busy, conflicting timetables, if you like. And this, I'm really loving it. And once you get the flow, it's really quite exciting.
So on a spiritual level, and I think if we do think spiritually first, this is an opportunity again to look at it and say, okay, we need to strengthen rather than dilute. And so what we've found by jumping online with services, watching services together, listening to podcasts together, and then talking about that. And sharing, if we're doing it individually, just sharing our devotional life more, and just making sure that we're going on one another's journey together. Setting aside time, strategic time, to be able to say, well, what did you get out of that? What impressed you about that? What did God speak to you about that? And being honest in our own struggles as well, so that we can. I mean, the extra time now in prayer is building a foundation of much more openness. So because it's in prayer that you hear your partner's real heart.
Sure.
The needs come out, the desires come out, the passions come out in prayer. And so that really builds a stronger foundation. So the spiritual is really important, but then the practical as well. We joke at the moment, we've never seen so many people walking together in the history of the city ever. But Sally and I are part of that. We're walking together at least 3 times, sometimes 4 times a day. The poor dog is exhausted. But we're walking together, arm in arm, hand in hand, and we're just chilling together. Wonderful. It's wonderful just to be together and to invest in that.
Because from my perspective, before all of this happened, if I wanted to share something with David or tell him, some great revelation that I'd had, which is probably perfectly obvious to everybody else, I'd always feel like he's distracted. He's thinking about where he needs to be, and I never felt like I fully had his attention. And now, if I time it right, because he tells me timing is everything.
Everything.
I feel like we're connecting at a deeper level than we used to. That's because great. Not distracted by 100 things. And probably he would say the same about me as well, I think. Yeah.
And I'd also say, my language, I'd say, because we know life isn't normal, we are under pressure. Up the ante. Up the ante. So, if you know hopefully everyone knows what their partner's love language is, then feed into that more.
Yeah.
And you normally do, because this is not a normal time. And so if pressure is there, before pressure comes, build into that. And so, if it is gifts, bring the gifts a little bit more. If it is words, if it is, Sally came home, she bought herself her own bunch of flowers today, so I didn't do that very well at all.
Good job.
No, I didn't. I said, I know, because David had a tooth out yesterday, so he's a bit sore today.
Oh.
And he's very sore today. But I saw these flowers, they were irresistible, they were on special, and I said, I know that if you had been out today and you had seen these flowers, you would have bought them for me. So I just bought them for you.
That is great. I think there's a lot of shoes.
Oh, yeah. There's no need for shoes.
Whatever it is, it's that thing of take the initiative. Recognise, okay, this is a pressured time, but it's also it's a time of opportunity. And so, invest in that. And that flows over in, every area of life. In areas of intimacy, areas of just communication, just up the ante and invest in it, rather than, as you say, let's not just survive this, let's thrive in it.
Yeah, and what you mentioned before was a really good point about speaking into your partner's love language. So, for example, if my love language is gifts, and I think, I love to get gifts, so I'm going to buy David gifts, that's actually not his love language. If I buy him gifts, he would look at it and say, what did you buy me this for? Yeah, exactly. But I know that his love language, it's like acts of service, it's words of encouragement.
Cooking a good meal.
Exactly. So that's where I go. And so it's just so important to think about that, because you get a lot of bang for your buck. Like little things make a big difference when you use the right love language.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what love languages is, so we talked when we do new marriage counselling and all that sort of stuff, and new couples, we talk about this. It's a website you can go on really easy. There's a book as well, but you can do the test online. It's a good thing to do as a couple, and even with your kids, you can do it as well, right?
Yeah.
You Google 5 love languages and do a test, and it's really
I recommend to everyone, if they don't know what we're talking about right now, go and find out. I mean, it took me years.
It took us 17 years of marriage before we discovered that book. And I went, oh my goodness, I've been speaking the wrong language the whole time.
We're slow learners.
Yeah.
We say to everybody, save yourself, find it out. Some people know it intuitively, but most need help.
Yeah,
very true. Very true.
So I mentioned a little bit about kids at the moment. So you've got 5, so you have well and truly beaten us, and even beaten Paul Swindell.
Wow. That's a hard job to do.
So you've kind of journeyed this. Obviously, you've not done parenting on lockdown to the same extent, but one of the things that's kind of come up a lot is how do we stay married well and have time together when we're also having kids at home constantly? In England, you can only go out once a day for a walk. That's all you can do. So so it's really locked down at that. For
exercise once a day, you can go out for essential things like shopping or medical supplies, or if you can't work at home, you can go to work, and then one outside piece of exercise.
Yeah. So for families, it's quite precious at the moment, and obviously most parents are now schooling at home, which is a whole other. Do you have any kind of advice or any tips on how to do that well, and also how to not lose your temper with kids? That seems to be coming up quite a lot, that parents there's just pressure and kids are struggling and all that sort of stuff. So any thoughts? wisdom on that?
Our eldest daughter, Jess, she's got 2 little boys and she's dealing with this issue right now. And so we're on the phone regularly and how are you coping, Jess? How's it going? She was absolutely ecstatic this week. She said, Mum, I scored a win. I said, darling, tell me about it. And she said, every day after they have lunch, she announces to her boys, I think 1's 7, 1's 4, okay, it's quiet time for 1 hour. It's your quiet time and it's mummy's quiet time. So you can't talk to mummy. And she was most excited about this. She said, I was shocked because they went, okay. But I think with this and looking at how Jess has managed it, routine and structure is so important. And if you listen to the experts, they will tell you the same thing. I was listening on the radio today, and that the children get out of bed and, you know, you have breakfast and then whatever it is that you do. And I think if you're homeschooling, they say you can accomplish in half the time at home what it takes a teacher all day to do. So don't think, oh my gosh, I have to school them until whatever time school normally would finish, 3:30, but just organise the time to benefit your children. Like, what kind of stuff do they like? Put in, you know, their work where they have to do things, but then reward them. And I think you guys are onto snacks and treats and all that. Kids respond really well to that kind of thing, but it does make it much more difficult to have the quality time as a couple. But then depending on the age of your children, bedtime is like being really strict. Well, now is your bedtime, and then saying, okay, this is our time. What are we going to do? And it's interesting, our daughter and her husband have just come up with this idea of date boxes, and you can order a date box from them. They've got a craft one, a cooking one, a something else one, massage type one. And in this little box, they have all of this stuff and little cards telling you what to do, because they've realised that people are just desperate. Like we actually sometimes don't know how to look after ourselves when we're stuck home. We know how to go to the movies, we know how to go to dinner, we know how to do so many things. But and so I think lean into your creativity and your partner's creativity. Yeah.
But with the kids, I think that the key, I mean, boundaries and routines become incredibly important. Kids thrive with the right boundaries and the right routines. And so, because of again, it comes back to these are not normal times. So parents have got to be able to sit down, or solo parents sit down and actually devise a strategies to say, this is what the day is going to look like. And you may need to be fluid, you may need to adapt it, but there's got to be routines at structured times for structured events that are going to go on. But the other big key would be, no matter what you decide the day is going to look like, that both parents are completely in agreement with what's going on. It's 101 for discipline, 101 for behaviour, all that sort of thing. Make sure that both parents are in complete agreement, so the kids aren't going to fight one parent against another, that kind of stuff.
And consistency in everything.
Absolutely.
I don't know how many people I have spoken to over the years who just say, it's just too hard to be consistent. I've read all the books, I know how to do it, but it's just too hard to be consistent. And when you see how their kids end up after years of parents saying it's just too hard to discipline them or too hard to do this, or it's not worth the risk. So togetherness, so that they can't bid one against the other, and being consistent so that they know whether mummy's having a good day, dad's having a bad day, whatever, this is what their day is going to look like.
And I think what you said, as far as, because they're pressured times, some parents may be losing their temper because kids are feeling stressed as well. And so they're not going to behave as normal. But so again, boundaries, consistency, routine, critical. But then if there are explosions, if there is conflict, establishing, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and sticking to that, so that you don't get involved in a war of, raised voices or, whatever. Things don't get out of control. It's like Johnny knows, Johnny, that's not acceptable.
Yep.
We don't do that in this house. And you know that if you do that, this is going to be the consequence. You're either going to go to your room or this or that, this or that. And so, again, clearly establish what's acceptable, what's not. And if you step over that line, this is what will happen. Just means that there's a framework there that keeps everybody safe. And again, for the adult, obviously, all the other stuff, don't go there until your emotions are under control. And, just, again, it's a pressure time, so we just need grace.
And rewards. Yeah. So, it's 101 again, but to say to your child, I know maths is the subject you hate the most. If you can do this for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, after that, we're going to have playtime or break time or a treat. And I think with the children as well, we have 5 children, and they're all unique, so different. To actually, if you're able to adapt your teaching method so that the child's creativity is unleashed. So if you've got an artist that they have this art time as a reward. If you've got a reader, that there's this special book that you've bought them that you can just go and read that book for an hour. Whatever your child does, to not feel like you have to be cookie cutter with all of them, but to allow them to be who they are.
Yeah, it's very good.
Great.
Very good. Sam.
One of the things that we're seeing quite a lot, and I think it's like a fairly newish thing because of social media, it certainly enhanced it. There wasn't social media when Asher was born, which was a blessing, I think, sometimes. But this comparison and this whole mum and probably dad guilt, but certainly a mum guilt thing of, all these women who've got it all together and got these timetables on this beautifully drawn board every day and all these amazing art projects these kids are making, they're baking cakes. And so I've spoken to quite a lot of mums who are just saying, I am struggling to even get maths done, never mind kind of produce a robot out of my recycling. How can you just speak into that for a little bit, the whole comparison, the mum guilt thing, and just feeling like you're failing? Because that seems to be a common thing, that as I'm talking to mums at the moment, it's this sense of, I'm not quite hitting the mark with this whole thing at the moment. I've not found my rhythm yet with it. Any thoughts on that?
My goodness, one of the things the enemy uses more than a lot of other things, I think, is this thing of comparison with women. We look at each other and he whispers to us, if you were just a little bit more like her, you'd be okay. If you were just a little bit more creative or crafty or clever. The thing is, every single one of us are made in the image of God, who is a creator. There is creativity inside of every single one of us. It just looks different. And so I think we literally have to discipline ourselves. And I think we're all guilty of it from time to time. There's always people who are going to be just so amazing. And there's always people that we kind of go, oh, you poor thing, you're not doing very well, are you? But just to stop it. And to look at you and your children and not judge or compare yourself to anybody else, but say, okay, it's me and it's Johnny or Jimmy or Sarah or whoever. And of all the people in the world, God chose me to be their parent.
That's great.
I'm perfect for this. I've got this. I don't feel like I've got it all the time, but God says I've got this.
Yeah, great.
Releasing yourself from the expectation, and often it's not others' expectation, it's this self-expectation. It's this voice on the inside that says, you're not doing very well, are you? And it's actually, you are. You are. And I think some days, if you can get from breakfast to dinner to bedtime, that's a win. And you've got to be so easy on yourself. You've got to be forgiving of yourself and go, you know what, I'm doing the best I can, because that's really all we can do the best we can with what we've got.
And I think not be fooled by the illusion. because
delete Instagram.
what we see on Instagram and all the programs. I mean, all those people have their bad days too, have their bad moments too. So not to be fooled by all of that, but also not to isolate yourself and to be able to share your frustrations with someone, whether it's a girlfriend or whether it's your partner or your husband, but let someone into that world where you feel like you haven't got enough and you don't know what to do. Because guess what? Everybody else is feeling pretty much like that as well, if they're honest. There's a few that are nailing it, but not many. And all the rest of us just need a friend to say, you're doing okay. How about we try this? So important. And, you know, I know as a husband that may not be engaged as much with the kids, although now everybody is, again, to be an encouraging voice that listens to the frustrations, that listens to the doubts and speaks into that. No, you're doing good. You're doing great. Otherwise, those pressures are horrendous.
Yeah.
And I think in this season, because women kind of tend to be the primary caregivers, even with both people in the house, it's shared. But I think in this season, we need more than any other time our husbands to be saying, you know what, you did good today. I love the way that you said this to our child. I love how you thought about this and thought about that, because I think oftentimes we just kind of feel like we're faking it, and on the inside there's this doubt of, am I really doing okay? But you get the person who means the most on the planet to you to say, darling, you're amazing. I believe in you and I'm so glad I married you. It just elevates you so high. It's
very good. Very good. That's so helpful. Thank you, guys. And listen, we could talk to you all day, and we already talked to you before we even pressed record. Just as we finish off, David, I think maybe you got a couple of words just to inspire us, encourage us in faith, because we know that walking through all this, that although all of this feels out of control, we know God is in control. And so the stronger we can be spiritually in this personally and together as couples and as families and everything, that is going to help us through all of this. So just a couple of minutes. Do you want to just finish off, just encourage guys who are watching today?
I've really felt as we've come into this season, and I think everybody sort of thought, what on earth is going on? It seems like there's so much out of control, and there is so much out of our control. We don't know, what's going to happen, how long things are going to go on. And I felt God speak very, very clearly as far as, hey, this is not the first time. If you look at the church and you look at the experience of believers all the way through, there are so many times where it looks like things have been completely out of control. And the one scripture that was quickened to my heart was in Acts, where it talks about after Paul was after Stephen was martyred. It says then a great persecution erupted. And the believers were scattered everywhere. And then it says, but everywhere they were scattered, they kept on preaching the gospel.
Yeah.
And it came back to that point of, in times of pressure, when the church was scattered, they couldn't meet in homes or they couldn't meet together. They were just in their homes and things were out of control. Yep. That's when God does some of his finest work.
Come on, that's great.
And my encouragement, I felt God say, in these times, if we respond right, if we respond from a position of faith and trust, and not survival mode of, we'll get through it, but if we respond in faith, looking from God's perspective, I think what God is doing is refining the church.
Wow.
It's a season where, as believers, we don't get to go to church. So we have to be the church.
Yeah.
And we have to be the church in our own homes. We can't worship together, so we have to worship in our homes. We can't seek the presence of God in the meeting, so we have to seek the presence of God in our homes. Yeah. We have to be praying together, reading like we haven't before. And I think it's a real season of refinement where we get to, with our families, go back to basics.
Right.
And say, where is God in our home? Where is God in our marriage? Where is God in all of this when we can't go to church? It's a real refining. But then I think it's also a season of reaching out. And I think it's so exciting. If the enemy thought that the church was going to be weakened, he got it so wrong.
Yes.
Right? Because if you think of the influence of the online church now, everyone I'm talking to is saying we're getting so many more people looking in, listening in to our online service than ever walked in the door.
That's right.
So the reality is the world is so vulnerable, is asking so many questions, and they can get them answered now so easily online. But again, it's not just online, it's all of us as individuals looking and saying, okay, well, where are the opportunities? Who can I talk to? When everybody else around us is afraid, when everyone else is nervous, doesn't have the answers, we do have the answers, and we can do something.
Come on.
So I think there's a refining, I think there's a reaching out, and I honestly believe at the end of this thing, I think God is laying the foundation for revival.
Wow. Come on.
I think some people think it's going to be so good to go back to church and see all our friends again and all that. I think, get a life. You're not just going to see your friends. If we do this right, our buildings won't be big enough.
Come on, that's great.
Because everybody's been listening in online, everybody's been building relationships, and we've been, being the gospel. Yeah. And so it's not just going to be the church coming back to church. It's going to be everyone who's been tuning in online. It's everyone who's been getting saved online and been getting saved over the telephone and getting saved.
Wow.
I believe he's laying the foundation for revival.
Great.
I said to someone early on, listen, if this virus has come from hell, I reckon the devil was really excited at first, thinking, yeah, we're really messing the world up. But I think right now he's scared. I think right now hell would be thinking, I think we made a mistake. Because the church isn't getting weaker, the church is getting stronger.
That's right.
And there's more people hearing the gospel now than ever before.
Wow.
And I think hell will be trembling for when the church can open its doors again, because it's not going to look like it did before. It's going to be crowded. It's going to be wonderful, absolutely wonderful. So we may be scattered to our homes, but God's doing something awesome. Yeah. Absolutely.
Great perspective. I'm excited now. I'm almost enjoying it.
And listen, this is just one of the things, even gathering with you guys here, we're looking for how do we embrace the opportunities of this season. Plenty of opposition, but plenty of opportunity in it. And so, you guys on the other side of the world at 9 o'clock at night in Melbourne, Australia, people are watching here in the UK at whatever time on their phones or the screen. We don't normally do this. I guess we could normally do this, but we don't. It's created opportunity. And we just want to say a massive thank you to you both, David and Sally. Really appreciate your encouragement and your investment.
Not just this time, but constant.
That's it. Into us personally, into Influence Church, into our campus pastors, and now in whoever who's watching, hundreds, thousands, millions of people that are tuning in to this COVID conversations. You might now be internet celebrities in the UK.
Maybe.
And we appreciate that, and we're looking forward to the day that we can physically connect with you guys again. Yes. Obviously, we were due to see you about 2 or 3 weeks ago in Australia. That hasn't happened. We are due to see you in July in the UK. We'll see if that happens. Still in faith. But for today, we want to thank you for your time. Really appreciate it, and just loved getting connected. And so everyone else, next week we'll be back again with another guest for COVID Conversations, tackling another subject of how in lockdown we don't just have to survive, but we can thrive in this. So we're back on Facebook and YouTube next Friday. We'll see you there for that.